This is activity 59. I just want to remind you that what I'm trying to make a case for here is, and gather evidence to support this view, is that the 14th Amendment, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, guarantees the rights of person and property, life, liberty, and property, those three basic rights that we've been studying since the first day of the class, and not personal liberties, not those sacred circle personal liberties rights that we've spent a lot of time on as well. I've tried to build that case by first looking at what was the problem historically, and we saw that it was a problem that had to do with the rights of life, liberty, and property. Then we looked at the actual words of the Civil Rights Act and which rights it guarantees, which is explicitly person and property and not personal liberties. And then saw that the 14th Amendment, by the testimony of the people who spoke of it, was identical to the Civil Rights Act, which means that therefore it guarantees the same rights of person and property. To kind of complete the case, we're going to look at the actual words of the 14th Amendment. And the same point, when these words are correctly understood, in the definitions understood by the people of that time, by the legal authorities, cited by them, it also confirms that the 14th Amendment guarantees the rights of life, liberty, and property, with liberty being understood as freedom from physical restraint. That's the point of letter A. Just naming, again, we've seen it before, these three rights: personal security, personal liberty, and property. And I just want you to notice that that when James F. Wilson in the House was explaining the Civil Rights Bill, and the question came up, well, what are civil rights? How do you define civil rights? This was his answer. He turned to Blackstone and quoted this passage, and he said, these are the rights that we're guaranteeing, and only these rights. Letter B is focusing in on the right of personal liberty in that threesome of rights. And as we've seen, it's freedom from physical restraint. It has mostly to do with being wrongly imprisoned. And so I've drawn this little picture here of somebody being imprisoned. That's a violation of personal liberty. We've seen why this is so important when we've talked about Guantanamo Bay, habeas corpus, this being the favorite way that tyrannies stay in power, by wrongly imprisoning people. We've also talked about it in the context of slavery. This is the right primarily that's violated by an institution of slavery. So it's a central and important right. Kent continues the conversation as an American commentator on the common law and kind of bringing Blackstone to an American context. And when he focuses on personal liberty, he again makes it clear that this has to do with freedom from physical restraint. Personal liberty is an absolute right of individuals, a favorite of the English law. It's a constitutional principle. No person shall be deprived of his liberty without due process of clause, talking specifically about the Fifth Amendment. And he says, but effectual provision is made against all unlawful restraint and imprisonment by the privilege of habeas corpus, the right of deliverance from all unlawful imprisonment. Notice when he's bringing in the Fifth Amendment, he's saying that in the Fifth Amendment, when it says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, it means that no person shall be imprisoned. That word liberty means no person shall be imprisoned without being convicted in a trial. This is important because the 14th Amendment takes the exact same words as the Fifth Amendment and puts it in the 14th and says, instead of no person shall be deprived, and that refers to the federal government, now it says no state, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The word means the same thing in both cases. It means freedom from physical restraint. A state now is forbidden to imprison any citizen unless they've been convicted of a crime, and that has to do again with living under a government that does not harm its citizens. Letter D is just kind of reminding us again about habeas corpus as being a right that goes back to Magna Carta, and it's a remedy for the violation of personal liberty. So this is a right that our tradition takes very seriously, and it's in the 14th Amendment for an equally good reason, that it prevent states from imprisoning anyone, including its African American citizens, without a trial.